Hey everyone, it's Christoph, and today we'll be going over a game. This is round two of the United States Chess Championship, and this was played a couple days ago from the day that this was uploaded. So this is probably today's round five. So this was probably about 3 or so days ago. But we have two very notorious players. We have Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces, and then we have Hikaru Nakamura with the black pieces. And let's just get straight into the game. So we see a e4. We see e4, not a e4. It's just e4 from Fabiano Caruana, and it's a very solid opening choice. This is my preferred favorite. Um, I was expecting to see during the time of this game. I was expecting some sort of maybe Sicilian or some sort of what's it called? Something I know the notation. I always forget the name for it. It's e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, and then you take on e5 at one point. These are things I should know, but as you can see, I've just been very busy lately. I haven't really looked into the theory. Anyways, we don't get that. We get a Rosalimo, or I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I call it Rosalimo, but we see c5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5. And of course, the idea is to get rid of this knight and then establish a strong center. And this is essentially what happens. We see g6, so it's obviously preparing this bishop to fianchetto on g7. And then we have a take, b takes, and then castle. Bishop g7. This pawn is now attacked. Whoops. This pawn is now attacked. So the only natural way to defend it is rook e1. There have also been accounts in the past where I've seen d3. This has been particularly common. I can't really cite any instances, but I have seen d3. But rook e1 is also a fine response. We see knight h6. So very standard move. This is a little unorthodox, but this idea is to get in this f5 break. So then we see c3, so preparing this d4 break. And then we see castle kingside, h3, and then f5, and this is this move that was to be expected to be played at one point, and it finally was. So let's continue with the game. We just see e5, so just instead of maintaining the tension, well, he's technically maintaining the tension, but instead of playing a sloppy move, maybe such as d3, he just plays e5. And this idea is this is going to be a fight over this pawn. We have a knight, we have a rook observing the pawn, and then what Nakamura will try to do is just try to eye this pawn as much as he can with all his major pieces. So let's continue. We see knight f7. This is exactly what I was talking about. This is all theory still, but the idea is to put a little more pressure on this pawn. We see 2 on 2. We see 2 pieces defending and 2 pieces attacking. Black cannot take because the first one to take loses that exchange. So we continue. We see just d3. And then bishop a6. And what is the point of this? Well, I believe this is still theory. I haven't looked at it in a while. But the idea is it makes white very iffy on if he wants to play queen e2. This is not at all what white wants to do. If he plays queen e2, he's opposite the bishop, and then this pawn is permanently pinned. So instead, oops, I skipped ahead a move, but instead we see bishop a6 and then c4, which is not a terrible move. You could choose to play queen e2 if you wanted to, but there's nothing really wrong with c4. An alternative might have been bishop f4 here. This is also a fine move if you were looking at this. I checked it, and it's working. All right, so then we see pawn d6 and then pawn e6. So kicking the knight. Knight e5, that's pretty much the best square for that knight. We then see knight c3, the knights are exchanged. And then we see the move rook b8. So obviously this rook is looking at this pawn at some point. If this bishop is ever to move, say bishop f4, then your b pawn is hanging. So then we see the move rook e2. So it's kind of a precautionary move. And another bonus or a plus to playing c4 earlier is that now you can put your rook on e2 without having to worry about a nasty pin. So now this bishop here on c1 can move to f4 at will. So then we see the move bishop c8, so putting more pressure on e6. And then we see bishop f4. So now this bishop is finally developed. We see rook takes b2. And then after rook takes b2, bishop takes c3. So now these rooks are pretty much skewered, but it's okay because it is an equal exchange. So the rook and bishop are exchanged, but so is the rook earlier. So everything is equal. We have a rook for white and a rook for black. We have a bishop for white and a bishop for black. And of course, each side maintains the queen. Pawn, let's do a pawn count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Nakamura maintains all his pawns. And white, he has 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 3. That's 7. So technically, white is down a pawn. But it's not so bad because these pawns here are doubled, so it all cancels out. So continuing, we see queen c7. This is pretty much the only logical move in this position. If you're approaching this from process of elimination, queen c7 is pretty much the only logical move. We see bishop g5, and well, maybe just maybe there will be something on e7 at some point. Hint, hint. We see bishop e6, rook e2, queen d7, queen e3. The bishop is forced back because it is attacked twice. And then we see this, queen takes e7. So we're simplifying further. Queen e7, rook e7. Now this a pawn here is attacked, so it has to be defended. So we see rook a8. We see rook c7, d5. And some pawns are exchanged. So at this point in the game, let's do another pawn count. Let's see, white has 4 pawns and black has 5. So we're still down a pawn. And will this? Oops, that's not what was played. My mouse keeps acting very funny today. Anyways, what I was saying is that will this pawn on c5 become a problem? Well, the answer is no. This is technically drawn, and this will not become a problem. The rooks will be exchanged, and then once these are opposite color bishops. So notice how just like in algebra, when we have inverses, we have positive cancels out with negative. Just like in bishops, light square bishops will always cancel with dark square bishops, and this is essentially what happens. So we see bishop f7, rook c5, king g7, rook c7. Now the bishop on this bishop here, this is pinned. So we see a6, h4, and then rook e8. So interesting idea here is that this rook may be looking to come to e1, but maybe that's not the best idea, and I'll show you in a minute. Let's see if we go down. Rook e8, we see rook a7, and we see rook e6. So a lot of players, including myself, when I first saw this, I was tempted, well, why not play rook e1 check? But the thing is, after king h2, where's your rook going really? You'd have to go back to e6. You'd have to go back to e6, and you've just wasted a move. If you go to rook a1, then white is the first to take on a6, and then the pawn is won back, and white is quite a bit better. So the whole reason why you don't even bother with this check, if I play this check, let me go back to it. If I play this check and the king moves, I just have to go back. I have to go back here. And I've just wasted a move. The check has done nothing. In fact, it's actually probably better to white because he's getting a little bit closer to the center. Although it's not that significant, he is improving his position. So we just see rook e6 right away, and then we see f3, h6. So trying to kick this bishop d2, and then rook c6, king h2, g5. Some pawns are exchanged, and the pawn, well now it's all of a sudden it's white who's up a pawn. But again, it's not significant enough to the actual material count of the game. So we see king g6, bishop e3, and interesting alternative might have been bishop f4. So for example, if rook c3 were to be played, this would just be horrible. You just see rook a6, and then white wins. So that's an alternative. Not that not even if white played bishop f4, I would never really see this rook here ever leaving this the 6th rank. So we see bishop e3, bishop c4, pawn a4, king f6, and well, now it's just a matter of who can start to trade material first. We see rook b7, bishop d3, rook d7, bishop c4, king g3, king e6, rook d4. Now the bishop is attacked, so it has to move. Well, actually, I was wrong. I was looking at a pawn. This is not attack. What am I saying? This is completely defended. I was looking at this pawn, and I was looking at something else. But anyways, we see pawn a5, bishop g2, bishop b3, and now the pawn is won. But after rook c4, rook d8, the pawn is won back. Bishop c7 happens, and then after rook a2, rook d6, king e7. There's not really any good checks. Rook b6, bishop c4. I'm wondering if you can kind of start to see a pattern. The pieces are just kind of shuffling around, and there really is. There's no way either side can really make progress. If you notice, this king is stuck. Well, it's not stuck, but he doesn't really need to move. Partially because there's a rook on the 2nd rank. So if he moves too far, this g pawn will get snatched up. And also, once the rooks are exchanged, it is just a simple opposite color bishop draw. An interesting draw, and there are actually ways. Not all opposite color bishop endings are drawn. I'll gladly provide a few examples in a separate video on a separate topic. But for this type of game, and most of the time, these are drawn positions. So we see bishop e5, rook c2, rook b1, king e6, bishop b8. King f6, rook e1, king f7, rook g1. So maybe this idea where I can plant the rook here and then I can move my king to better squares. But even then, how are you ever going to really make progress when the king is just going to be shuffling? King g6, king f6, king g6, king g7, king g6, king g5, king f6, and then, well, of course, I just have a rook that can just stay here and pin this pawn. So really nobody can make progress. King f4, bishop e2, and after bishop a7, rook b2, the game ended pretty quick. After bishop d4, the rook is attacked, rook b1, and then at this point in the game, it was agreed to be a draw. As you can see, neither side can make progress. So this is where the game ended. It could have continued, say, if bishop b1, you could play g3, and after bishop g3, bishop g2. You can just stop there because there's nothing white can do to make the king move off of g6. There's nothing you can do to make the king move from f4. And there's nothing you can do to stop black from just shuffling his bishop all over the board. He can go b3, he can go c4, or whatever. So from c2 to b3 to d6 or whatever, d5, and then bishop c6, bishop e8, bishop f7, wherever. And same thing goes for white. He can just shuffle, bishop a3, bishop c5, or whatever, and you can never make progress. Also, another way to draw this is if at some point you play g4, pawn takes, f takes, and then at any point in time, this would still be drawn. But if black even blundered and this bishop came to g7, he could play bishop c4 and then sack the bishop, and king and bishop versus lone king is obviously drawn. So therefore, this game is a draw, and that's it. So that concludes this video, and as always, I hope you learned something from it. Thanks for watching.